Lack of equal opportunity proves most devastating to development, in the way that lack of education does to effective development. In our country, a large number of people are still deprived of education. The cause is manifold. Study of His Majesty's activities reveals that ever since the beginning of his reign, His Majesty has constantly enhanced all levels of education among his subjects, and a significant part of his activity involved financial support from his private funds.
National development aiming at the attainment of self-reliance requires certain levels of education. One of His Majesty's key development concepts is reflected in the royal remark to the extent that a country is destined to lag behind others in terms of development if it lacks advanced education. For this reason, His Majesty utilised a certain amount from his private funds to establish the Ananda Mahadol Foundation, which gives scholarships especially to those with academic excellence to pursue higher studies abroad. The scholarships are given whereby no obligation is imposed on the recipients whatsoever, as His Majesty is of the opinion that their services, no matter in what facilities and for which offices or organisations, will all benefit towards national development.
His Majesty's policy calls for no signing of a contract obliging the recipient to pay back the monetary worth of his scholarship, because unlike debts that dissolve when paid off, His Majesty prefers that the recipient relies on his own ethics principle to return to serve the country out of gratitude and moral obligation. This sort of bindings will never be dissolved, as it bears on you mentally, not materialistically. It was a mental contract I entered into with His Majesty. You see, receiving financial support from Ananda Mahadol Foundation does not require signing a contract in writing. But this is a pledge of loyalty. I do specifically recall his words during the audience with him. His Majesty said we must realize what our duties and responsibilities were.
5 decades have passed. The number of former Ananda Mahadol scholars in the fields of science, research, law, social science, medicine and engineering, who have in the meantime returned to apply what they learned abroad to the task of national and human resource development keeps rising.
My field was engineering. During the audience with His Majesty, he advised that I also acquire knowledge in other fields, such as psychology or human resource management. Having gained almost 30 years of work experience, I cannot help but marvel at his far-sightedness in pointing out the importance of all-round knowledge. What he said about 30 years ago has proved true. I do vividly recall His Majesty's advice to me. He said to study abroad not only involved comprehensive knowledge and required diligence and determination, but there is one more thing I should bear in mind. That was, I should not only concentrate on studying to know some things, but also take the opportunity to study how the things were done, i.e., the practical and management aspects, not just the theoretical alone.
ประเทศนั้นๆที่ไปอยู่เนี่ยเขาทำกันยังไงในแง่ของการปฏิบัติในแง่ของการบริหารจัดการ
The Royal-sponsored scholarships, for which His Majesty desires nothing in return, are another instance of the royal compassionate concern for his subjects, which serves as a more effective bond of gratitude and loyalty on their part than any other written ones.
My life as an educated person was made possible by His Majesty, my benefactor. I would never have been able to afford it on my own, nor would my parents have been able to support me financially. I feel gratitude to him for having given me the higher education opportunity as well as job opportunity. No other job would have been as secure, promising and honourable.
ที่จะมีความเจริญก้าวหน้ามีความมั่นคงเป็นเกียรติภาคภูมิใจก็คงจะไม่ได้รับแบบนี้
His Majesty's dedication and devotion has served to inspire most of the former Ananda Mahadhan scholars to sacrifice their lives and work for the country's growth and prosperity, each realizing that this is His Majesty's concept of being educated. Still, higher education attained by only a group of people does not suffice to give impetus to national development. To make basic education accessible to as many people as possible is another aspect of His Majesty's concept of education for his subjects, as seen in the Royal Development projects in all regions of the country. Despite the varied regional and local problems, His Majesty did not feel deterred in his effort to provide educational accessibility for his subjects. One objective of Ananda Mahadhan Foundation in giving scholarships, establishing schools and taking care of those deprived of education is to continue from its short-term material help to giving them something which will sustain their lives. With education, the people will now be able to lead a stable life, have a good occupation and render help to others. Children become orphans or families become destitute almost every time a natural or man-made disaster occurs. The extent of damage relies on the degree of violence pertaining to each disaster. Rajapaksa Nugroho schools under royal patronage come into being with the objective to raise and provide education to descendants of the victims of disasters, starting with the typhoon that massively destroyed Cape Talumpuk in 1963 onwards. Thailand has since gone through many more natural disasters, but despite difficulties and sufferings, hundreds and thousands of children were pulled out of despair by assistance rendered by Rajapaksa Nugroho Foundation via the Rajapaksa Nugroho schools under royal patronage. Professor Kunying Arom Chanuanjit came from a poor family adversely affected by the typhoon that hit Cape Talumpuk more than 4 decades ago. Upon high school graduation from Rajapaksa Nugroho School, she pursued higher education, graduated with a master's degree and was determined to continue on to the PhD level, all on her own financial resources. The problem is, there was no education at such level in Thailand at the time.
Trying my luck, I wrote to request an educational loan from the foundation, but to grant such a loan or scholarship was not among the foundation's activities stated in its printed document.
Mr. Kwan Gyal Vajrarotai, Director General of Rajapaksa Nugroho Foundation, brought the matter to His Majesty's attention. As it turned out, her request was graciously granted approval. From that point on, the Foundation's printed document has been amended to include in its objectives the scholarship program, whereby recipients will be supported to pursue the highest level of education, their individual capacity permitting.
His Majesty made the final decision in his capacity as founder of the Foundation. So it was the first scholarship the Foundation granted by royal command.
The royal granted educational loan changed the life of a formerly deprived child from Bak Panang district and sent her on the road towards excellence, where she could execute her educational potential to the fullest.
I had never had that much money in my life. That's why I always say that His Majesty is more than a father to me, to which my own father agreed, because his assistance was unconditional.
Within a few years, she returned with a PhD and got a job. She had made a few monthly payments to the foundation for the loan when His Majesty graciously discharged her of all debts.
Continuous public donations in support of His Majesty's charitable activities proved to enhance the progress of Rajapaksa Nugroho Foundation under royal patronage, such that its educational program could render support to more people.
At the initial phase, all children from the families of disaster victims could go to school thanks to support from the foundation. After some time, there were no more pupils after them, so there the program stopped. Besides, the parents gradually recovered from the devastation. What happened later was that our school admitted a new category of children, namely the deprived ones.
Thanks to His Majesty's benevolence and genuine concern for a wide diversity of problems caused by the social gap, tens of thousands of children were able to emerge from their deprived background and become the offspring of Rajapaksa Nugroho.
Deprived children are divided by definition into 10 categories. For example, orphans, homeless children, children living in remote, inaccessible areas, children living under the threat of sex trade, children in the labour industry, abandoned children, children of HIV/AIDS patients, and children living in drugs-related surroundings.
Almost all of Rajapaksa Nugroho schools are boarding schools. Children with academic distinction receive financial support for higher studies, their ability permitting. Furthermore, graduating students of Rajapaksa Nugroho schools can mainly be certain of an occupation and self-reliance capacity regardless of their grades. Applied self-reliance and productivity based on group effort are taught as supplement courses in the school's curriculum. Students participate in group activities whereby each group tends to its plots of vegetables or animal pens, conducts agricultural product processing, and gets training in arts and crafts as supplementary occupation, all of which can actually generate income for them. Thus, they are trained for financial management and savings.
We teach them the complementary approach. Suppose the theme is vegetable. They will study its biological properties, while mathematics, e.g. calculation of space and weight, and many other subjects related to the vegetable can be applied.
In the past 60 years, there were periods when the country was faced with numerous crises as a result of wars, battles, and terrorist insurgencies, causing educational deprivation among our youth. A lot of schools under royal patronage had to rely on support from His Majesty's personal funds, which served to finance the provision of education for them. For those living in the Northern Highlands, once surrounded by opium fields, His Majesty established Chao Po Luang Upatam schools, which were modified from those staffed by the Border Patrol Police. His primary objective was to educate the hill tribes so that they could read and write Thai. Development still continues to this day.
The parents had had absolutely no schooling. With the establishment of schools, however, access to education was allowed to all, themselves, their children and grandchildren. That is how His Majesty has captured the hearts of them all.
To generate the participation on the issue of education on the part of armed force personnel stationed in the provinces, His Majesty allotted a certain amount from his private funds to support collaboration between the Royal Thai Army, the Ministry of Education, and the local people for the construction of schools, especially in the remote areas in all regions of the country. These were collectively known as Rom Clow schools.
Going to town on the laterite roads took forever. Your hair became red walking or bicycling. The forest paths were made for ox-drawn carts. There was no paved road like in the city.
The Rom Klaus School in Sakon Nakhon used to be situated in an inaccessible area, but today's civilization has left no trace of the past hardship for the younger generations to see. Still, the fruits of His Majesty's past compassionate deeds can be vividly seen in the classes of students who have graduated from the school in the meantime. Some have furthered their studies in the higher levels, while others earn their living in the occupation suitable to their capacity.
At present, a large number of Rom Klau alumni are working in every local office, be it in the government or private sector. For example, in the Kork Sisupan area and Mueang district of Sakon Nakhon and vicinity. I would say 80% of them are our alumni.
Some decided to return to their alma mater after graduating with a bachelor's degree, aiming to render educational support which they once received to the younger generations.
We should render what His Majesty had given us to the next generations. At the same time, current students can learn from and follow the tradition established by the alumni, because it is a good thing to do. And when every class inherits this, the meritorious deed is also continued.
In 1975, a small secondary school was built in Ban Balek, Nakhon Phanom province, thanks to His Majesty's financial support. Its name is Wat Burn Lek School under royal patronage. The request for royal financial support stemmed from the fact that the community was at the time plagued by poverty as well as terrorist insurgencies. The local children rarely had a chance to further their education upon completion at the primary level.
Not more than 5 qualified for or could financially afford to pursue education in junior high schools in town. They had to go their separate ways. Some got good jobs, but some got into real trouble. So it dawned on me that I should perhaps bring the matter up with the king.
The first allotment, worth 400,000 baht, was granted from the royal funds for the construction of the school, which was on the plot of land dedicated to His Majesty by local people.
Most of the school children here suffered in one way or another. Some are from a poor family, some from a broken home background. I do sympathize with the latter, as I, too, came from such a background. I want them to receive good things in life just like I did, and also have a bright future like mine.
The school received additional support at a later stage. Altogether, the support was worth more than 13 million baht. The amount was partially deposited with the bank as capital to run its foundation, whereby interest was utilised as operating fund, while the rest has been set aside as scholarships to the present.
The school's revolving fund, utilised to give educational support to needy children, comes from interest earned from the foundation capital, totalling about 14 million baht at present. Savings are in the form of bank deposit and government bond, through which annual interest is beneficial to the school. The king allotted the working capital to us in the first place.
This small school under royal patronage still functions as provider of education. It does not resemble any thriving institution by appearance, but the administration of the school has never wavered from the objective set by His Majesty, namely to provide educational opportunity to the needy.
The king has given someone the kind of future she could never have dreamt of. Many become doctors, teachers, and so on. I, for one, would never have been able to afford studying here. I am overwhelmed. My life today would not have been possible without him.
The problem, due to the prevalent lack of educational opportunity, has been eased somewhat, as a number of needy children became literate thanks to the schools under royal patronage and those receiving royal financial support. But low-quality education, due to severe lack of teachers, especially in remote rural areas, still generally prevails.
On the occasion of His Majesty's Golden Jubilee anniversary celebrations, the Foundation for Distance Learning via Satellite came into being to provide equality education through technological application among institutions of learning all over the country. United efforts from various offices have generated collaboration. The result is a mega-sized project with its network covering more than 3,000 schools scattered in all regions of the country. It has attracted the attention of countries more technologically developed than Thailand.
Normally, we Thais have to go to Japan for studies, but in this particular area, the Japanese have to come to study on our project. It is a new technology. Even Australia has not been able to achieve what we have.
This is a Royal project. So, this project has a quite specific characteristics. Usually in other countries, if they use a satellite system, they must thinking about the cost effectiveness first. But in this project, they can use satellite freely. Not only one channel, but also they can use 6 channels and 24 hours. That means they can do the lots of experience to use these 6 channels.
Education of the quality available in schools in big cities is accessed via television monitors by students mostly sitting in a small wooden classroom somewhere in Thailand's remotest areas. Knowledge acquired through distance learning via satellite not only eases the burden on the part of the teachers who used to be compelled to simultaneously tend to students in 3 classes, but also helps increase the number of provincial students who qualify for university admissions.
Statistics show that in 2004, 32 high school students, Muslim and Buddhist students combined, from Saiburi Jang Prapakan School in the south, were admitted at the university level. A year later, more than 40 got admitted.
Teaching is broadcast live via satellite from the classrooms of Klai Kangwon Palace School under royal patronage, serving as a network broadcasting station. The school was founded by the Princess Mother during King Ananda Mahadon's reign. Originally, the student body comprised of offspring of court officials and people living in the palace vicinity. Subsequently, this has changed following His Majesty's policy to admit students from all walks of life, like any other schools. These include a group of children who have nowhere else to go.
In one of His Majesty's conversation with school officials, he observed that those who have been rejected by their schools in the face of mischief or misconduct are to be regarded as deprived children. They have nowhere else to go. Here is the King's School. You had better help them, install discipline and moral principles in them, make good citizens out of them. It will be of enormous benefit to the land. Failing this, they will grow up and become and continue to be a disgrace, a burden to society. Social problems arising because of this will be grave and hard to tackle.
Aside from formal education for young people of schooling age, a lot of needy adults and victims of natural disasters seek education as a means to upgrade the quality of life. Inspired by the legendary Phra Da-Bot, who taught their disciples, determined to persevere in their pursuit of knowledge. His Majesty initiated Phra Da-Bot School in 1976. Situated on a plot of land owned by the Crown property, the school offers training specifically to needy youth who are determined to seek education.
Boarding and tuition are free of charge. All expenses are shouldered by His Majesty. There is no restriction as to regards to nationality, religion, age and sex. All are urged to attend courses there where everything is free.
Despite the policy to provide education free of charge, teaching staff comprising of volunteer teachers who are all knowledgeable and well versed in their fields of specialization with strong dedication and determination render quality services. In keeping with His Majesty's concept, students known as offspring of Pradabot can be assured of high quality training offered by other general professional institutions. Still, a special feature making the school more distinctive than others lies in its ideology, which applies at all other Royal Initiated schools, namely the emphasis on education and moral principle combined.
His Majesty always stresses the need to combine training with moral principles in order to upgrade the students' morale standard worthy of good citizenship. Educational excellence must go hand in hand with ethical principle. I am not teaching occupational skill for the students to earn their living, but I provide knowledge based on moral as well as behavioral principles for them to ponder about and adhere to. If they are able to think for themselves, know the essence of what is taught, know what is right and what is wrong, for example, the virtue of punctuality, honesty, etc., then we can hope that their future occupations will be fruitful.
Mr. Weerapong Polakan is one of Pradabot alumni. He came from a poverty-stricken family, but given the opportunity to further his interest in learning, which the school combines with ethical principles, his adherence to righteousness and modesty has paid off. Weerapong is supporting himself, now as the proprietor of a small vehicle repair shop in Bangkok.
I used to be a good-for-nothing kind of guy, but now my life has changed completely. I have a much better sense of responsibility. There is not much problem in what I am doing. I have had good training. Some people ask where I had learned my trade. I told them I graduated from Pradabot School. Many of them have heard about it.
Nowadays, Pradabot School, which is administered by the Pradabot Foundation, is offering more training courses as well as admitting more students. Royal-sponsored and Royal-supported education opportunity has been granted to every level of the country's educational structure, as well as to people in all age groups facing various types of problems. Hundreds of thousands of Thai people have availed themselves of free education in the levels which prove to enable them to become self-reliant for more than 4 decades. Royal-sponsored human resources development has borne fruit in high-caliber scholarship recipients, numbering in the thousands, who are instrumental to advance national development, reflecting His Majesty's philosophy. Our loss is our gain. In effect, capital investment for the sake of education that generates no monetary returns has realised its gain in the people's attainment of self-reliance and development, which is the core of national development.
His Majesty once said that if the populace at large is given sufficient and proper education, then any type of development will be easy. The meaning of sufficient and proper education, referred to in His Majesty's remark, can be found in the book The Story of Mahachanok, which he wrote.
His Majesty's view, King Mahachanok's quest for supreme tranquility is not yet opportune nor timely, because Matila's prosperity had not yet reached an appropriate peak. Everyone from the Viceroy down to the Mahouts and the horse handlers, and up from the horse handlers to the Viceroy, and especially the courtiers, are all ignorant. They lack not only technical knowledge, but also wisdom. They do not see the essence of what is good for them. Therefore, an institution of universal learning must be established. As illustrated in the book, His Majesty's concept of technological knowledge not only entails in-depth understanding of the essence of each individual subject, but also implies the objective to render mutual assistance. This can be seen in His Majesty's description of a true pundit. At the very outset, the conventional belief that the aim of learning is to pass the examination must be abandoned, because our life does not revolve around checking the correct answers or crossing out the wrong ones in a test, but involves tackling a whole lot of work and scrutinizing all kinds of problems. Towards the end of Mahachanok, the story depicts a mass of greedy people trying to make the most profit out of the abundant mangoes on the tree, regardless of the need to sustain the source of their profit. Witnessing this, King Mahachanok observed, "They do not even know what is good for them. They like mangoes, but they destroy the good mango tree." There are many possible interpretations of the mango tree, but by implication, the tree is the symbol of Thailand, where rich resources prevail.
The mango tree that bears fruit is tantamount to our country. When the people want to consume the fruit, they forget to treasure the tree. With the branches broken off, the tree is uprooted. It is like the current situation where our country is facing an economic slump.
With perseverance, we are to open our heart and mind in a standing quest for knowledge, both in depth and in breadth. To study a subject, we should first get the gist of it and then try to scrutinize each minute detail one by one so every part becomes clear in our mind. Having achieved this, we should next try to see where the essence lies, to consider which part is the cause and which the effect, how the cause and effect are correlated, and so on, until we thoroughly and clearly understand. Intellectual knowledge or wisdom, as conceived by His Majesty, must rely on true understanding of nature and its laws, and how the cause and effect of an action are correlated. His Majesty's philosophy regarding education is concretely reflected in every role-initiated development project.
The subject of my teaching is His Majesty's development initiatives. Despite the fact that they have won recognition the world over, what could be the reason why the Thais still look to the West, use Western texts in our teaching? It's high time to rely on His Majesty's initiatives as the source of knowledge, as a science. We must immediately move to include the subject in our top priority list for research and study. The success to be attained is twofold: to be the world's leader in the area of sufficiency economy, and to be able to retain world leadership in the area of agriculture, which we have attained for generations.
We all have to have religion or personal belief to spiritually guide us in our living. Also, we need to have education, knowledge to enrich us spiritually and materialistically in order to live. Both are essential and cannot be separated. One of the pictures towards the end of the book portrays a principle as foundation of proper education, and a virtuous principle leading to success is perseverance.
His Majesty taught me to be diligent, to uphold perseverance. If you think about it, he is our king, a hard-working king indeed. whereas we civil servants work and receive salaries in return. So my working principle is based on diligence. But I can see those in the government sector and private organisations today. They are not working hard enough. What can you say?
ใครก็ตามเวลานี้เห็นผู้คนข้าราชการที่ไปทำงานในองค์กรเขาไม่ขยันกันเลย
One principle that keeps coming up in His Majesty's remarks is discipline.
Being disciplined and having conscience are two virtues which can be applied in every step of our life, in studying, in our occupation, etc. A disciplined person is assured of success in study and progress in life. In contrast, those who lack discipline mostly have to drop out in the middle of their studies. That's the virtue of discipline. Usually, disciplined students get things done without a hitch.
Royal scholarships were originally granted with the aim to increase the number of high-caliber individuals to meet advanced technological requirements. Then, primary education was provided in the form of royal-supported schools. Added to this were the gradual upgrading of academic quality, inclusion of self-reliance in the curriculum at all levels, and finally, application of advanced technologies as a means to attain educational development itself. But sustainable development at the national level cannot be achieved through academic excellence alone. The very essence of education, according to His Majesty's policy given to all educational institutions, lies in the ethical principle, the moral code of conduct, and the strengthening of intellect on the part of students. This is the source of true understanding of the sufficiency economy theory.
Our presentation on royal-supported education has attempted to depict a principle that implicitly nurtures the Thai society. It's the principle His Majesty has long envisioned and in fact based his educational support on all through the years. It's the principle of giving. Giving within one's capacity, particularly giving in support of education which, in the end, generates grand returns. The evidence is realised when the society in which we live is prosperous and happy.